These are the Wandering Therapist sessions. I am Tyler Patrick, your wandering therapist, and I'm here to provide you with hope, healing, and helpful insights in your journey for a wholehearted life. What's going on, Love Strong? I'm Tyler Patrick, your wandering therapist, and I'm excited to have you along with me today. Today, I wanted to talk about a subject that is really frequently talked about in our world. It's still really difficult to understand and implement, and it's coming on the heels of something that I've got going on with our Love Strong project right now. We've started a new series called Vulnerable Stories, where we're inviting people to come and share their stories of challenge and struggle and vulnerability and triumph. And just recently we posted our first story, which happened to be my personal story. And I'll make sure that we link that in the titles below so that you guys can see it. But I was thinking about the topic of vulnerability itself and what makes it so difficult and what makes it so powerful. So that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today with our episode. I was sitting in a group earlier this week, one of my men's groups, and this group in particular is focused on recovering from sexual addiction. And in the discussion during our group, one of the men brought up that he had recently found out that his wife had been unfaithful to him and how it had made him feel. And this is a group where most of the men have been unfaithful to their wives. And so he brought this up, and now there was this reversed role and this reverse discussion. And as he was talking, he said, "You guys, I don't know even what to say here. I feel really weak. I feel really inadequate. I feel really insecure. I'm worried, that maybe I'm not enough. And I feel really bad because now I understand even more what my wife has been through, and I can't stand the thought of what I've caused her and the pain that I've caused her." And he said, does anybody else understand that? And it was like crickets chirping. And I could see the look on his face just going cringing inside, oh no, nobody's going to see me, nobody's going to understand me. And there was silence for 30 or 40 seconds, and he was starting to just wilt into himself because he'd been vulnerable and he'd shared this story inside. And I looked around the room and I could see in the other faces of the other men in the group that there was real connection happening, but nobody dared to speak up because they also felt their own sense of weakness and their own vulnerability. And about 30 or 40 seconds into the silence, one of the other men raised his hand and said, "Hey, I understand. I've been through the same thing." And then another man piped in and said, "You know what, I've had something similar happen to me." And they started to discuss really what the issues were and what they had been struggling with, feeling like they had been the only ones in the group that had felt like they had gone through or were going through that same struggle. And as soon as the discussion opened up and it became safe enough to talk about those things, the whole energy in the room shifted. And there was this deep sense of brotherhood, this deep sense of connection, this deep sense of understanding that was born as a result of one man's courage to speak up with something that he was vulnerable with. And I got to witness that this week, the true principle of healthy vulnerability shared in the right way with the right people. And this is really difficult. Most of us have our own secrets. You could think right now, I'm going to ask you, what's your biggest secret? And every one of you has probably got something that pops into your mind, and it probably overloads you with a sense of shame or fear or a feeling of weakness or inadequacy. And I'd ask you, why are you holding on to that secret? And the answer is simple, right? There's fear. There's fear that if somebody knows this about me, they're going to judge me, they're going to reject me, I might not be worthy of love and connection. I'll be honest, when I posted my story, and if you guys go and listen to it, you'll see there's some things that are pretty vulnerable in there that could honestly hurt me, hurt my reputation. We have those fears for legitimate reasons because it is a risk. Something's not vulnerable if there isn't fear. But there's also, you also can't have courage without fear. And courage is the ability to tell your story of vulnerability, and to allow other people to see it, to hold it, to benefit from it, and to love you as a result. So who do you share it with? That's the challenge. You want to share it with people who can understand your story, who will listen to you and provide empathy, who will learn with you so that they can understand how to support you better, and people who will be able to kind of use that story for the benefit of their own lives and keep it confidential if that's what you're asking them to do. So think of those people in your own life who you might be able to share your story with. And now take an inventory of that secret again in your life and what might happen if you were to open up and share it with somebody else. I can't tell you guys how often in my office somebody will come in. Let's just take the example of a pornography addiction. Somebody comes into my office and they say, I feel so terrible. This is the worst thing in the world. I'm a terrible person. I'm unworthy. I'm inadequate. I can't believe that I'm just a pervert, whatever. And they honestly believe that they're the only person they know that might have a problem with pornography. When in reality, according to Google, 70% of men are accessing pornography monthly. And yet we don't understand that, and we don't know where to go and get the context, and so we think we're alone. And the more that we're alone and the more that we isolate, the more that our vulnerability becomes a prison that we live in. But as soon as we can find some context, as soon as we can open ourselves up to the world and realize, you know what? There's pretty much nothing I'm going through that I'm alone in. That there's probably actually millions of people struggling with something similar with whatever my secret is, whether that's childhood abuse or mental health issues or addiction problems or past trauma. There's really nothing that you're going through that you're 100% completely alone in. And being able to share your story is what opens up that ability to connect with other people. There's nothing in my job that I love more than sitting in a group where somebody finally opens up and shares something that they've been carrying with them, that they thought that they were going to take with them to the grave, and they're shaking and they're trembling and they're shrunken and they're acting small when they share it. And by the time they leave, they've been built up because somebody else comes in and says, me too, or I understand. Or my favorite one is when somebody says, I can't believe you shared that with me, and the fact that you shared it with me feels so sacred. It makes me feel more connected to you. It makes me love you. It makes me want to even be a better friend to you. That's the benefit of vulnerability, you guys. So contemplate that principle in your life, who you've got in your life that you can be vulnerable with. And if you do, think about what a benefit it is that you have that place and that outlet. So consider that. Have a look at this other video that we've got posted. I'd love to hear what your comments are on it, and you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for being here with me. If you found this to be valuable for you, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you're facing particular struggles that you need help with or roadblocks that you're running into, please submit a question. I'd be happy to answer it for you. All right, you guys, I just wanted to share an answer to a question, an anonymous question that came in. I'm going to read you the question really quickly and then just get to an answer here. The question was, my husband came clean to me about his addiction to pornography almost 2 years ago. He was dishonest with me about it before we were married, so I had no idea. Since then, he's gotten a lot better about honesty, but his time between relapses hasn't improved at all. It's been almost 2 years and he still can't seem to make it more than 2 weeks without looking at pornography and or masturbating. Is this normal? ? We've both gone to the Latter-day Saint support meetings, and I feel like everyone seems to see a lot more improvement in a shorter amount of time. It's really discouraging to feel like nothing is getting better, and I'm starting to wonder how long I should stick around in this marriage. I feel like nothing he's tried or that we've tried has made a difference or helped him go longer periods of time without a lapse. Help. This is a really great question, and first I just want to say I know that as a spouse who is going through the process of healing from the betrayal trauma that comes, I know that that road is a hard road. And most spouses that I talk with, the bigger issue for them is the lack of honesty than it is the actual acting out. And so on one hand, with your question, I'm really happy that the process has happened where you guys have gotten honest with each other, where he's become more honest with you, and he has approached some recovery through the LDS 12-step meetings. And hopefully you guys have gotten a benefit from that. I know that just getting the support there can be really helpful, especially on the betrayed side of just trying to get some support and some healing and some understanding and some perspective. So I just wanted to speak to this. This is something that I deal with a lot in my practice as a marriage and family therapist, and maybe just give a couple of insights and ideas. First is that everybody's journey is going to look a little bit different, and it's going to go at a different pace. So the fact that your journey or his journey is taking a little bit longer than maybe other people around you, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just happens to be the way that things are working, even though I know it's probably extremely frustrating. So what my concern is here is that he may have gotten comfortable with being honest with you, but he hasn't gotten actually into really committing to himself to getting better by doing what's necessary. And that's maybe where you're feeling frustrated. It's one thing to be able to learn how to come clean and be honest, and it feels good. I sometimes in my groups, with my men's groups, when they come in for these addictions to pornography and things, they get in the habit of coming in on a weekly basis and saying, hey guys, I had a relapse, and they get loved by the group, and the guys say, thanks for telling us, thanks for being honest, keep working, keep trying, which they should do. But the flip side to that is that change has to be happening. There has to be commitment. There has to be new learning. Every time there's a lapse or a relapse, there should be some level of learning and understanding and a new commitment that I'm going to commit to until I get better. That's what recovery is so beautiful about, is that it's a change, it's a process of constant change and growth. And so if your husband's coming to you and saying, hey, I acted out again and I haven't changed anything about the way that I'm living, why would you expect it to get better? So he should start looking at something like, at a bare minimum, something we call bottom lines, which is that he's going to look at his patterns and where things go when he acts out. And a bottom line needs to include two things. It needs to include a change in the way he's going to live, and this has to be his choice, not yours, even though you can give suggestions, and how he's going to hold himself accountable until it becomes the new way of life for him. And this will include sacrifice. So if he acts out on his phone when he goes to the restroom, his bottom lines are probably going to need to be something about how he uses his phone, whether he has internet on the phone at all, or whether or not he takes his phone into private places, or he gets on his phone in private, and hold himself accountable until that's the new way of life. So if he gets on the internet alone on the computer late at night, he's probably going to have to set some bottom lines around the fact that he doesn't get on the computer, period, alone late at night. And then hold himself accountable, preferably to someone on his team, like a sponsor at his 12-step meeting, or a therapist, or a healthy man in his life that understands what he's working on, and he'll hold himself accountable to those things until he makes those changes. So if you see there's commitment and learning and change in between lapses, it might be okay to say, hey, we're making progress. But if you don't see those things, that's where you're going to be really frustrated, and that's where you're going to have to start making some difficult decisions. And you can choose to either stay and just know that will be part of your pattern, and that's okay. And I believe that you can actually find peace and love in a situation like that. And I think it would also be okay to start looking at things and going, I can't take this anymore. And I'm in for a husband who's actively working and seeking recovery. And if he wants to do that, then I'm great. And if not, then I'll have to make some other considerations. So I'm sorry for your pain. I hope this is helpful. I wish you the best of luck. Sit. Good girl. Find it. Good girl. Go get it. Good dog. Oh, good girl. Heel. Good girl. Nope. Heel. Sit. Heel. Good girl. Sit. Sit. Come here. Heel. One more, and then we'll go. Heel. Nope. Come here. Heel. Good girl. Sit. Oh, good dog. Nope. Good dog. Sit. Good girl. Good dog. That's so cool. She's learning. Come here. Good girl. Good dog. Heel. Good dog. Sit. Heel. Sit. Good girl. Good dog.
What are you up to?
Picking a few wildflowers. The wife.
Curious whose wife's gonna be more impressed with your 2 dozen or my 2 dozen.
Those are awesome.
Check it out.
Those are beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Gotta pay attention to the details.
That's